Hey, welcome to the August 24th work session of the Elizabethtown City Council. Ms. Cindy Walker will open with prayer, please.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and as always, we thank you for our many blessings. We thank you for the blessing of our family and our friends. We thank you for the blessing of the many employees of this great city. We thank you for the men and women of our armed services who pay the ultimate sacrifice so that we can live in this city and this great country. We ask that you bless this council and our mayor, help us to make decisions that are in the best interest of this community and are pleasing to your eye. These things we ask in thy blessing name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First topic is a fairness ordinance. We have Speaker Jessica Capone. Did I say that right? Would you like to come up to the microphone, please? Jessica, can you tell me, are your address Elizabethtown?
Yes, it's Elizabethtown. Mayor Berger, City Council, thank you so much for your time today. My name is Jessica Capone, and I'm an Elizabethtown resident and a fairness supporter. It's been a while since the Elizabethtown fairness supporters have addressed the council, so we wanted to give you some very brief updates and ask that you consider joining the many other cities across our Commonwealth that updated their city rights ordinances, civil rights ordinances. As I'm sure you know, the Supreme Court recently ruled in favor of marriage for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people, but that did not in any way affect discrimination protections for the LGBT community, which still do not exist in Elizabethtown, in most of Kentucky, and most of the United States. Some folks say existing civil rights laws are sufficient, but state and federal laws don't include sexual orientation and gender identity. They do include race, color, religion, national origin, age, familial status, and disability. In Kentucky, we even protect smokers from discrimination, but not the LGBT people. I know some city council members have expressed concerns about the protected classes, namely age discrimination, which protects people aged 40 and over. Elizabethtown is free to write its civil rights laws however best fits the city, but that language is simply mirroring the Federal Civil Rights Act. The age discrimination in the Employment Act passed by Congress and signed into law in 1967 protects individuals 40 years or older. The only folks missing from the state and federal civil rights acts are LGBT people. And while a recent ruling from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission suggests that LGBT people can file employment discrimination complaints on the basis of sex discrimination, that is not written into federal law, and it does not extend to housing and public accommodations. Only employment. That means that LGBT people are still very vulnerable to being denied an apartment or service at a business based on who they are, and that's not fair. The last time we visited City Hall, only 3 Kentucky cities had updated their civil rights ordinances to include LGBT people. Now that number has almost tripled to include Covington, Danville, our state capital Frankfort, Lexington, Louisville, Moorhead, the small Appalachian coal town of Vigo, and Midway, which updated its law 2 months ago. We would be so excited and honored to see Elizabethtown on that list. Updating our civil rights ordinance is a simple step you can take to send the message that all are welcome and protected from discrimination in Elizabethtown. In the informational folders we shared with you 2 weeks ago, there were many fairness facts and figures, a model updated civil rights ordinance from the city of Moorhead, and a guide to updating civil rights ordinances from the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, the state civil rights enforcement body, which supports statewide inclusion of LGBT protections. We do sincerely hope you'll take all this information into consideration and update our city Civil Rights Act to include LGBT people. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Angie Darnell.
Angie and Sharon are ill. They sent their statements to me to read, if you all will accept that.
Okay, I just have Angie Darnell and Scotty Milks.
Yeah, and Scotty also is asking, another Elizabethtown fairness supporter has been given Scotty's.
And can you say
Yes.
your name?
I'm Chris Hartman. I'm director of the Fairness Campaign, Kentucky's statewide LGBT organization. I'm the fairness version of Richard Nelson, who you'll hear from a little later. Good to see you, Richard. These are from, these very brief statements are from Angie Darnell and her wife Sharon Darnell, who are Elizabethtown residents. Mayor Berger, City Council, thank you so much for your time today. My name is Angie Darnell and my wife Sharon Darnell. We're Elizabethtown residents, moms, and fairness supporters. The past couple of months have been an exciting time for our family as we're finally able to be legally recognized as a married couple here in our home state of Kentucky. I can't tell you the relief we felt as we no longer have to worry about things that other married couples take for granted. Like if something happens to one of us, would our children be protected? Before the Supreme Court ruling, only one of us was allowed to be the legal parent of our children that we've been raising together. As much relief and joy as we feel over the marriage ruling, we are still fearful of legal discrimination. In some ways, having legal marriage before discrimination protections makes us and other LGBT couples more vulnerable. Without explicit discrimination protections, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people could be married today and be denied an apartment tomorrow just for being married. House hunting can be a scary and uncertain experience. As one couple shared with the council the last time fairness supporters spoke here, they were denied an apartment because they were a gay couple, and the landlord wouldn't rent a, quote, 1-bedroom to 2 men. LGBT folks want to put a roof over our families' heads, earn a living, and eat at our favorite restaurants without the fear of being turned away just because our family may look different than others. We live in Elizabethtown because we love Elizabethtown, and we want to continue raising our family here. Please take this one small step to update our city's civil rights ordinance to ensure our family and others like ours feel welcome and appreciated alongside everyone else. Thank you for your time. And then someone else will be reading Scotty's statement.
Hello, I am LaShonda Wilson, and I have been an Elizabethtown resident for 28 years. Thank you so much for your time. My name is LaShonda, as I've said, and I just want to briefly echo what others have said and remind everyone that fairness truly does good for our city. Your folders from 2 weeks ago have sheets inside of them that says, fairness is good for business, and many of Kentucky's major employers, all of which have some type of LGBTQ anti-discrimination policy, they know that creating an environment of inclusion helps attract and retain the best and most diverse talent pool for their companies. But fairness just isn't good for workers. It is truly good for business, as the tourist industry knows well. According to the World Tourism Organization, LGBT tourism is a $65 billion industry in the US alone. Right now, our neighbor Louisville is capitalizing on the moving market of their LGBT tourism task force and promotion specifically geared toward LGBT couples. And if Elizabethtown updated their civil rights ordinance to include LGBT people, we'd be Louisville's only neighboring city with fairness protections, and that would certainly attract some visitors who seek out locations that are inclusive and diverse. Even the tiny Bitico the Perry Cole town of 334 people passed a fairness ordinance in 2013 that has seen a $250,000 impact and investment in their city because of their decision to include LGBTQ people. Right now, people regularly stop to the city to patronize business and share support. And they even had a new playground donated and installed by folks inspired by their efforts to include LGBT people in their community. Elizabethtown will only benefit from updating its civil rights ordinance to include LGBT people, and I truly hope you will consider in doing so in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you said Scotty Milks is also not here.
She was here.
You were Scotty Milks, okay. Thank you. Richard Nelson.
Mayor and City Council, I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Richard Nelson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Commonwealth Policy Center. I live in Trigg County, Kentucky. Cadiz is the county seat. I'm here to speak tonight regarding on the proposed ordinance to elevate sexual orientation and gender identity to protected status in housing, employment, and in public accommodations. I call them SOGI ordinances or SOGI laws. We have several concerns. First of all, we ask, why is the law necessary? Are there documented cases of homosexuals being discriminated against based on their sexual orientation? I know that there was one or two examples shared, but are there documented cases brought forward to the Human Rights Commission? If not, why is this ordinance necessary? This ordinance is trouble at the root of it in that it drags private sexual behavior into the workplace regarding the employment provision. It makes behavior a protected status. The other categories that are protected by law are benign, non-behavioral characteristics. Race, ethnicity, and gender are not behaviors, they're inborn characteristics. This law would be easy to abuse, and here's how. If an employer shouldn't ask about somebody's private sex life in an interview, and the prospective employee doesn't bring this up, then how can an employer be held accountable for failing to hire somebody based on their sexual orientation or gender identity? If an employer fires an open homosexual for poor job performance, the former employee can bring an unfounded charge to the Human Rights Commission and tie up the business owner's time and resources. These laws violate conscience and religious freedom. Let me share several examples from across the country how these laws were invoked to violate religious freedom. In Washington State, Baronelle Stutzman of Flores faces right now losing her home and business because she refused to provide a floral arrangement for a homosexual wedding. In New Mexico, photographer Elaine Huguenin was fined over $6,600 for refusing to do a photo shoot of a lesbian wedding. In Oregon, bakers Aaron and Melissa Klein were fined $135,000 for refusing to provide a wedding cake for a lesbian wedding. In New York State, farmers Cynthia and Robert Gifford were fined $13,000 for refusing to host same-sex wedding on their farm. And in each of these cases, so-called fairness laws were invoked. I shared with you on at your places a copy documenting each of these situations. There are several others as well. 2 points. One is that how were those fines commensurate with the supposed crime that was done? And how is this tolerance? How is that fair to those who have religious convictions and are trying to run their businesses according to those convictions? Those laws really weren't fair to those individuals. There was a recent story out of Denver just the other day where the city council is looking at not renewing the lease for Chick-fil-A in their airport because of their CEO's opposition to gay marriage. And he hasn't said anything in the last couple of years, but because of his past opposition, they're looking at kicking out Chick-fil-A. What we're witnessing, I believe, is a minority forcing a new moral code on the rest of society, one that threatens religious freedom and the rights of conscience. And we saw in Frankfurt just the other day where somewhere between 5,000 to 10,000 people came out to support religious freedom and the conscience rights, in particular, of our county clerks. SOGI laws threaten the rights of pastors. I know there are a few pastors here this evening. In Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, last year a fairness law was invoked to force a pastor of a private wedding chapel called the Hitching Post to perform a same-sex wedding ceremony. That was on the front page of or it was in the Washington Times last October. What this ordinance does is it elevates the rights of sexual expression over the rights of religious freedom and of conscience, which, by the way, those are protected. Religious freedom and conscience is protected in our state constitution. Religious freedom is protected in our federal constitution as well. What an ordinance like this does is it says that conservative views on human sexuality are inferior to liberal views on human sexuality. And it squeezes out and potentially criminalizes religiously informed beliefs from the public square. If this ordinance were to pass here in E-Town, the right to dissent will be trampled. I believe that this is an extremely divisive law that's unnecessary. It's based on a subjective category that may change over time. And if it passes, it will divide this community. For these reasons, I ask that you oppose this ordinance. Thank you.
And vote. There you are.
We received a grant application on property on the public square under the city's program for funding. We have provided grant funds to, I think, 3 other businesses when they've made improvements to their buildings downtown to this point in time. And what the city has done in the past now is, after the application has been reviewed at the administrative level, we have presented that to the city council and asked you all to adopt a municipal order approving the funds. So before you all, you have the total request that was made. It was for a little over $70,000. We're recommending a grant approval for a little over $17,000. So we would place that on your agenda for the next regular meeting, which would be September 8th, and ask that you adopt the municipal order approving this work. This particular project dealt with the renovation at the rear of the structure. That's why it has a Cherry Alley address. It ties into the residential units that are going to be created as part of that project.
And when you say we're recommending you raise.
The staff, it's reviewed by an internal administrative committee of the city staff.
Your office.
Our office, and Charlie sits in with us to make sure we're in line, I guess.
Yeah, no, that the grant request is for over 70,000. But these items here that you're saying to do with the grant award, those are the only ones that really qualify.
Those were the ones that we felt, based on the approvals that we have given in the past dealing with exterior improvements to the property, that we felt comfortable in recommending to you all funding. Yeah, and it's not uncommon. I mean, in the past, a lot of the grant applications or the requests have been for up to $100,000. I think the most we've awarded in the past was around $42,000 on a grant application. So, I mean, we ask people to submit their full project and scope, but we have tried to evaluate and fund, or recommend that you all fund aspects of the property that will restore things to historic look of the building. In all cases, we haven't been able to do a full renovation of the piece. I mean, because some of it's damaged and can't be restored. And typically, we've tried to focus again on the exterior. There have been requests for re-roofing of some of the buildings downtown, and then some of the other underlying work, if you will, footer and foundation work, and we just haven't felt that that's appropriate for the city to fund those kind of things.
Primary reason that we feel good about this one is, as Ed said, of course, the property fronts on the square, but it also faces Cherry Alley, and the rear there that faces Cherry Alley has a, in the bottom portion is the store access, and then has this balcony, which will be a residential balcony that will run out to the area that we're developing as a public area that we've been calling Walker Square. So feel good that it will enhance that whole appearance in that portion of the downtown.
So like I said, we'll put that on the agenda for September. That'll be on your agenda for September 8th for a municipal order, because what we actually do then is if the council approves awarding the grant application, we actually sign an agreement with the property owner, and they will submit then paperwork to us showing the actual funds expended, and they'll get reimbursed based on that. So it's just not a check. I mean, they have to show to the city that they have expended those funds. So. Ready to move on to the next one? About a month ago, you all had some discussion based on some requests about how the city would address outdoor seating downtown. And just a quick review, I guess is the right word. We don't have any standards for outside or outdoor seating on the downtown area currently. There are really two issues to deal with. One, just outdoor seating in general. And then secondly, because most of the businesses downtown, their front wall is their property line. So if they have any outdoor seating, it's actually on public property. It's at the sidewalk does not belong to the property owners downtown. In other locations in the community, it may be on their property, but downtown, their property line stops at the face of their building. So we have a little bit of a different issue in most cases, because outdoor seating would be on public controlled property. Now, there are some businesses that, because of the way their lot may be configured, that they could have some seating on their property. And so some of the information that I'm going to talk about with you this afternoon would not deal directly with those. But after we had the initial discussion, you all asked us to do some research. We have done that. We've looked at 3 or 4 ordinances from communities across the state of Kentucky. We've also done a search and got another 6 or 8 ordinances from across the country to see how people addressed those concerns. And what I've done for you on this outline is list pretty consistently. We found these 9 topics are addressed in most of the regulations or standards that communities come up with. And the first is a permitting process. Just about all the ordinances that we found, there is an annual permit that's done, and that can be handled, of course, based on the local community by whatever permitting agency that may be appropriate. We happen to already have an encroachment permit process in the city ordinances that deal with encroachments or activities in the public right of way. So we, in developing a new ordinance to address this concern, might be able to use that process to review. Typically, that would involve some kind of drawing or sketch that would show table and chair placement. As we talked about previously, the concern that we're going to have downtown is just maintaining a proper walkway width for the general public if we allow this encroachment onto the sidewalks. In the research that we have done, it appears that that in most communities ranges from 4 to 6 feet in width. Based on our sidewalks, we'll probably be closer to 4 foot. We'll do some more work in looking at locations downtown, but it'd be nice to be able to say we're going to have a 5 foot clearance. I think that's what the staff will try to make sure we can get for you all as we prepare the ordinance, if that's your all's direction. There is typically, because it is an encroachment or they're on the public right of way, there's generally a hold harmless agreement that's part of an application process that we would recommend that we use. Like I said, the second issue then is, as I mentioned, the sidewalk clearance. I mean, we want to make sure that the general public can still get up and pass through the public sidewalks safely. We want to make sure access is still to the businesses along that area too. A lot of the ordinances we found do have a limit of how far the tables and chairs can be away from the building. So a lot of them have that they must be within a 4 or 5 foot space adjacent to the building. So again, that's the way to try to make sure that clear area is granted along the sidewalk. Some of the ordinances that we saw too actually talk about street barriers. I think that is probably in locations where sidewalks are wider and you would have seating both by the business and then a clear area and then potentially seating out by the street. In our case, like I said, just because our sidewalks don't have that kind of width, I don't think that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to write some language on. But like I said, from our research, wanted to make you all aware of that. Most of the ordinances we saw also addressed hours of operation. Some of them were, you can't have seating outside after 11 p.m. Some of them were midnight. Some of them stated that outside seating was consistent with the business operation and the alcohol sales that were permitted in the community. Just so you all know, right now, our ABC laws require that alcohol sales cease at midnight. So we may look at that being consistent with hours of operation, or may look at a earlier time too. But that's another, like I said, standard topic that was addressed. A lot of the ordinances that we saw limited locations. That is, they actually named certain streets in their community where you could not do this type of seating. I'll be honest with you, the ones that we read, I didn't go any further to see why some city in Wisconsin doesn't allow it on a certain street, what that street is or whatever. But it was just something we wanted to note for you all. I don't, from our discussions with some folks, not only in the office, but with the Heritage Council, I don't think that we will propose that we limit the seating. If we do it by permitting and by a permitting process, I think that alone will be able to control how that will function for us. There was also in a lot of the ordinances that we saw a limit for the months that you can actually have outdoor seating. And again, without an explanation of that, just looking at the ordinances, my speculation is because outdoor seating is probably not as used as frequently in the winter months, that it was an effort by those communities to just make sure that the street furniture and stuff was not causing a problem through that time of year. I don't know if, making sure the sidewalks were cleared and just, you didn't want street furniture out there at different times. Pretty consistent that all of them in dealing with music and loudspeakers do not allow that in outdoor seating areas. That's pretty, like I said, in the ordinances we saw was pretty consistent. I know the council, when we talked about this a month ago, was concerned on how communities address the issue of alcohol as it related to outdoor seating. The 2 or 3 ordinances that specifically talked about alcohol sales with outdoor seating made it clear that the only way to have an alcoholic beverage at your table outside was if it was brought to you by a server of that business. So I can't go inside to the business, and if they have a bar there, and buy a drink and say, oh, I'm going to walk outside on the street and go sit myself down with my drink in hand. Like I said, it was pretty clear in those ordinances that the way you get an alcoholic beverage at an outdoor seat is you have it brought to you by a server of that establishment, and it stays at that location. So I know the council voiced the concern of, if it is out on the public sidewalk, are we going to have people getting up and moving around and doing those kind of things? In most of the permitting, the language was that, I mean, violations of the ordinance are reason to revoke the permit. So I think that would be an aspect that if the permit was granted and that was noticed that that was taking place at an establishment, that would be a reason to say, okay, then this is a privilege. You no longer have that privilege, and you can't have the outside sales. It's also in most of the ordinances we saw that, or at least in the Kentucky ordinances, that seating, because even though it is associated with the business through an agreement with the community, that outdoor public seating on public sidewalks is not to be counted toward the minimum seating required to get an ABC license. So you still have to have a minimum of 50 seats with a restaurant in our community. So you couldn't have 42 seats in the business and say, oh, I've got 8 seats out on the public sidewalk, so I have 50 and I can have alcohol sales. It has to all be within the building itself. So, or the seating number has to be that. Another suggestion or recommendation that you all may want to look at, if you have the concern for the outdoor seating, and I'm making this suggestion, I will tell you, I have already mentioned it to the chief, so I'm not going to shock Chief Schiller with my comments, is that we may want to use some of the alcohol revenue money to make sure that we have a police officer in the downtown area along those times, and they could actually walk kind of a beat in the downtown and have that presence. Not going to try to tell the police department when they need that mostly and stuff, but I'm sure their Friday and Saturday nights would probably be busier than Tuesday night, but those kind of things. And I know you're supposed to go to your special meeting at 5 o'clock, so the outline is there. I'm sorry I went a little longer than I should have on some of the topics, but like I said, we wanted to present the outline to you all to follow up that we have done some more research, and most likely will then use that outline to craft an ordinance for you all to address that concern. And I'm sure once we get the first draft done, we'll present it to you before we ask you to vote on it. So there'll be opportunities for some more input. And I'm
Just real quick and short, do we currently have anything on the books, Ed, related to?
yes, it says you
sidewalks?
can't block the sidewalks at all in
But
downtown.
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Ed. Robert.
Mayor and council, as a part of our stormwater work, particularly the Poplar Drive project, we purchased a few months ago a house at 316, let me get the right address, 316 West Dixie Avenue. And that house is popularly called let me get that in front of me, sorry.
Garnet.
Yeah, the Garnet House. Yeah, there you go. It's right there on the paper. Yeah, but it's the Garnet House. But we have intent to demolish that house and want to give the community an opportunity this weekend, Saturday, between noon and 1:30, to go in the house and bid on items that might be there of interest to them. And as such, have an opportunity to salvage those items within that house. It'll be fairly informal. I'll be there at the site, but we look forward to folks coming out and taking a look and seeing if they can. Items like that are kind of important, and for some people that are doing remodeling that have similar period homes, and as such, it might be an opportunity to get that one piece of trim or that one door that matches everything else that you're trying to do. But anyway, so that's going to be this Saturday. It'll be, I guess, clear of the parade and other activities, but we should be in good shape to do that. But bring a flashlight, because there's no utilities at the place.
Or how we
So-
gonna get the word out? Will there be a sign out there, or is this the only announcement? or-
Yeah, there's in the paper last Sunday. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we've advertised it duly, and hopefully we'll get some good response. So thank you all.
The next city council meeting will be Tuesday, September the 8th, because of Labor Day. And, anything from the council? Okay, I need a motion. First of all, before that, we're going to call to order the special meeting. I'm calling to order the special meeting. Now I need a motion. Close the meeting pursuant to KRS 61.810 to conduct deliberation on future acquisition or sale of real property by the city.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? There will be no action, right?